Let's talk about one of the most fundamental human stories there is, the story of migration. I mean, it's a process that has shaped our world for literally thousands of years, and it's happening right now, all around us. But before we get in all the definitions and theories, let's just make this personal for a second. Seriously, take a moment and think about it. What would it actually take for you to pack up, leave your home, your friends, your country, and start all over somewhere totally new? It's a huge, life-altering decision. And really getting that is the key to understanding migration itself.
Okay, so let's start with the basic foundation. At its core, migration is just that, the movement of people from one place to another. It sounds super straightforward, right? But the reasons behind that movement, well, that's where things get incredibly complex and fascinating.
To make sense of all this complexity, geographers have this brilliant framework they use called the push and pull model. You can think of it as the two main forces that shape pretty much every single decision to move. It's a really simple but incredibly powerful idea. Push factors are all the negative things about a place that make you want to leave. They're literally pushing you away. And then you have the pull factors. Those are all the positive things about a new place that attract you, kind of like a magnet drawing you in. And this is where it gets really interesting, because we can break these forces down into 5 big categories. Now, the biggest driver around the world is often economic, people just looking for better jobs. But you've also got huge political factors like war, environmental ones like natural disasters, demographic pressures, and powerful cultural reasons like wanting religious freedom. And here's the most important part. It's almost never just one of these things. Most people migrate because of a whole combination of these factors. But of course, it's not always that simple, is it? Just because you feel a push away from home and see a pull toward a new place doesn't mean the journey is going to be a straight shot. The real world is always a lot messier than that. Yeah, in fact, the journey itself can change absolutely everything. It's almost never a simple hop from point A to point B. It's usually full of challenges and surprises that can completely change a person's original plan. So one of the biggest reasons for this is something called an intervening obstacle. Basically, this is any challenge that gets in the way. It could be a physical barrier, like an ocean or a mountain range. It could be an economic one, like not having enough money for the whole trip. Or it could be a political one, like strict immigration laws that just won't let you in. But it's not all negative. On the flip side, sometimes a migrant runs into an intervening opportunity. This is an unexpected good thing that happens along the way. Just imagine someone is heading for one country, but on the way, they stop at a city to earn some more money. And they end up finding a great job, a place to live, a welcoming community, and they just decide, you know what, this is home now. The journey itself created a brand new destination. All right, so now that we've got the framework down, let's see how it actually applies to the real world. This is where the theory really comes to life, when you look at major migration events from history and from today's headlines. Take a look at this staggering number. After the invasion in 2022, something like 6 million Ukrainians were forced to leave their homes and flee the country. This is one of the clearest and frankly most tragic examples of a political push factor you can find. The incredible danger and total instability of the war created this overwhelming force that just pushed millions of people to look for safety somewhere, anywhere else. Now for a very different kind of story. Back during World War II, the U.S. had a massive labor shortage. So to solve the problem, it worked with Mexico to create something called the Bracero Program. The agreement brought more than 4 million guest workers north to fill really essential jobs in farming and on the railroads. And this is just a classic textbook example of an economic pull factor. The sheer availability of jobs and the promise of a steady wage acted like a powerful magnet, drawing millions of workers to the United States for a very specific economic reason. Sometimes the motivation is just about comfort. A fantastic example of this is the huge internal migration we saw in the U.S. in the mid-20th century. Millions of people moved from what one source perfectly described as the butt-cold winters of the northern states down to the Sun Belt in the south and west. This just perfectly illustrates an environmental pull factor. People weren't fleeing a disaster. They were simply attracted to a better quality of life. In this case, a much milder, sunnier climate. And that desire alone was powerful enough to completely redraw the country's population map. So let's look at a case that perfectly combines both push and pull factors. Back in the 19th century, the early members of the Mormon faith were facing just intense persecution in the American Midwest. It got so bad that their leader, Joseph Smith, was actually murdered by a mob. This violence forced them to go on this incredibly difficult journey west into what would become the Utah Territory. So you can see the two forces working together perfectly here, right? The cultural push factor was the terrible violence and persecution they were fleeing. But there was also an equally powerful cultural pull factor, the search for a place where they could finally practice their religion freely, in isolation, without anyone interfering. It's a textbook case of push and pull driving one single event. Okay, so we've looked at the framework, we've gone through some examples, but why does any of this actually matter today? What's the big takeaway? Well, it turns out understanding why people move is absolutely critical for our society. It lets geographers and governments predict how populations are going to shift, and that's essential for things like planning our cities and managing resources. It helps us understand how different cultures spread and mix together, and it's really the foundation for creating smarter, more effective policies on everything from the economy to social services. And that brings us to our final thought for today. The forces that push and pull people are always changing, always evolving. So as our world continues to grapple with things like climate change and political instability, we have to ask ourselves, what's going to be the next great push factor that reshapes our world? It's a huge question, and the answer will probably define the rest of the 21st century.